Hello friends, welcome to Biren's Academy. I am Pramila. Today we will going to discuss about the metaphysical poetry which is there in your unit 1. So let's start. During the late 16th century and early 17th century, Elizabethan poetry existed itself. The people were no more interested in Elizabethan writers, so a new school of poetry emerged known as Metaphysical School of Poetry. So during the 16th century and 17th century, early 17th century, when the early Elizabethan poets was written many writings, many poetry has been created, but after a long period of time, the by reading that poetry, people they are no more given that much of importance to their poetry, Elizabethan writers. So at that time, a new school of poetry was started that is known as Metaphysical School of Poetry. ବୁଝିପାରିଲ ଏଲିଜାବେଥନ୍ ପିରିୟଡ଼ର କନଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ମାନେ ବହୁତ ବର୍ଷ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଏଲିଜାବେଥନ୍ ପିରିୟଡ଼ ରାଇଟର ମାନଙ୍କର ଯେଉଁ ଲେଖା ହେଉଥିଲା ସେଇଟା କନଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଟଲି ସେମ୍ ଷ୍ଟାଇଲ୍ ପ୍ୟାଟର୍ନ ବହୁତ ବର୍ଷ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ପଢ଼ିକି ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କର ଆଉ ସେଥିରେ ଏଲିଜାବେଥନ୍ ରାଇଟିଂସରେ ଆଉ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟ ଶୋ କଲେ ନାହିଁ। ତ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ନ୍ୟୁ ସ୍କୁଲ୍ ଅଫ୍ ପୋଏଟ୍ରି ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ ହେଲା ଯାହାକୁ ଆମେ କହିବା ମେଟାଫିଜିକାଲ ସ୍କୁଲ୍ ଅଫ୍ ପୋଏଟ୍ରି। Drummond writers to use the term metaphysics. Drummond is the first person who used the term metaphysics. See, I have highlighted the important points. You have to note it down and you have to remember all the important points. So Drummond is the first person who has used the term metaphysics. But it was John Dryden used this term in English literature while indicating to John Donne. No doubt Drummond has used the term metaphysics, but John Dryden they used this term. No doubt Drummond has created the term metaphysics, but it was used by John Dryden. ବୁଝିପାରିଲ Drummond metaphysics वर्डटा कॉइन करथिले बट ड्राइडन बहुत जगह से तांकर मेटाफिजिक्स वर्डटा व्यवहार करछन्ती स्पेशली इंडिकेट करिया पे जॉन डॉन को केमिति ही हैज गिवन ए कोटेशन दैट इज डॉन इफेक्ट metaphysics not only in his satire but in his amorous verse. So here according to John Dryden he has indicated John Donne. Understood? Donne affects the metaphysics not only in his satire but his amorous verse also. Next, Dr. Samuel Johnson is the first to use the metaphysical school of poetry. So you have to remember the three names. Three metaphysical writers' name. First, that is Drummond has coined the word metaphysics, and it was used by John Dryden. And Samuel Johnson is the first to use the metaphysical school of poetry in his work Lives of the Most Eminent Poet. In his work Lives of the Most Eminent Poet he has used this term. Dryden said Donne must be a great poet but he is not a good writer. According to Dryden, he says that Donne must be a great poet but he should not be he is not a good writer. I hope you understood all the important terms and important points. Next we will move on to the metaphysical poets. See, Andrew Marvell, John Donne, George Herbert, Richard Crusher, Thomas Crew, Abraham Cole and Henry Vaughan. They are the important writers of metaphysical poet. They are the important poets of metaphysical poetry. You have to remember this name also. Then we have to see some of the characteristics of metaphysical poetry. After that we will move on to the writers, the poet. So novel, thought and diction and action. In his writings, in the metaphysical poet writings, we will find the noble thought, diction, and action. Their thoughts and ideas were unique, they did not imitate anything. So the metaphysical writer, they didn't imitated any other writings. They have created their own writing. Okay? So according to Walter Scott, the metaphysical played with thoughts as Elizabeth has played with words. Okay? Here Elizabethan. This is. So metaphysical played with thoughts, but Elizabethans played with words. Understood? And frequent use of conceit. In the writings of metaphysical poet, you will find the frequent use of conceit. Okay, before class, I think in unit 4, I have already discussed about the conceit. Okay, so here you will find the frequent use of conceit. For example, if we'll take John Donne, the forbidding morning song, okay, that is there, written by John Donne, a valediction to forbidding morning. There he has used the conceit of compass. Like that, in many other poetries of metaphysical poet, you will find the use of different types of conceit. Then learnedness and unconventionality. You will find the learnedness and unconventionality in their writing. So according to Dr. Johnson, metaphysicals were the men of learning, and to show their learning was their whole endeavor. They copied neither nature nor life. Okay, so it is a very important quotation. You have to remember this also, that Dr. Johnson, he said that metaphysicals were the men of learning, and to show their learning was their whole endeavor, and they copied neither nature nor life. Understood? And we will find the love, affection, and hyperbole also. When the metaphysical writer or the metaphysical poet, when they use the conceit, they have defined by taking the theme of love. Understood? देखो मेटाफिजिकल पोएट माने बहुत मात्रा रे कौन करथले कनसीट को व्यवहार करथले आ से कनसीट केमिति व्यवहार होतला तांकर लव एफेक्शन को देखिया पे बा लव बा हाइपरबोलिक वर्ड पे अंडरस्टूड केमिति से जिते कंपेयर करुले लव सहित आउ गोटे किसी जिनस माने आउ जो जिनस भी नौले गोटे मेटाफिजिकल कनसीट होता अंडरस्टूड जमती कि मु फर्स्ट कहली ए वैलिडिक्शन फॉरबिडिंग मॉर्निंग इज अ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल एग्जांपल ऑफ जॉन डॉन से कौन अच्छी सी निजर लवर को सी गोटे कंपास सहित कंपेयर कर अंडरस्टूड माने गोटे कंपास रो गोटे साइड गोटे पार्टा निजे आ अलग पार्टा होची तांकर लव ओके जोटा कि सी निजे घूरी घूरी आसिकी तांकर लव पाखे फाइनली पहुँच जाए फाइनल डेस्टिनेशन अंडरस्टूड सो you will find this kind of conceit in their writing. Next we will discuss one by one all the important metaphysical poet. First one, John Donne, and his time period was 1572 to 1631. John Donne was born in London in a Catholic family. John Donne लंडन रे जन्म होते गोटे कैथोलिक फैमिली रे. In 1621 he married Annie Moore, the niece of his patron, and was imprisoned for elopement, and Sir Robert Dury was his patron. Okay, remember this one, Sir Robert Dury was his patron and he married to Annie Moore. Okay, Annie Moore, he married to Annie Moore, is the patron and was imprisoned for this elopement. And he wrote satire, elegy, verse letters, songs and sonnets and holy sonnets also. You will find John Donne केमिति लिखुले satires लिखुले elegies, verse letters, songs, sonnets आ तांकर holy sonnets भी रहुतला. And he wrote 19 sonnet. Understood? ये जो 19 sonnet लिखिदिले ए 19 sonnet को डिवाइन मेडिटेशंस बोली कि भी कह जाउतला. अंडरस्टूड जेटा मन रखिबो ट्राई टू रिमेंबर दिस वन डिवाइन meditation. Okay, divine meditation. Divine meditation. These 19 holy sonnets are also called divine meditation. The next, for his patron Robert Dury, Don wrote 2 anniversary poem. Okay, Robert Dury ପାଇଁ ବୋଲିକି ତାଙ୍କ ପେଟ୍ରନଙ୍କର ମେମୋରାଇଜେସନରେ ସେ ଦୁଇଟା anniversary poems ଲେଖିଥିଲେ. ସେଇଟା ହେଲା An Anatomy of the World which published on 1611 and Of the Progress of Soul which published on 1612. See, I have given all the important writings. Okay, if possible, please try to see some of the summaries of that poetry. Okay, for your better understanding, and you will remember that poetry in a easy way if you will see or if you will listen the poetry. Okay, next, in 1610 and 1611 he wrote 2 anti-Catholic polemics. Okay, that is Pseudo-Martyr and Genetius his conclave. Okay, next, T.S. Eliot mentioned dawn in his work Whisperer of Immortality. So how the T.S. Eliot remember his name, that is in his work he has written the Whisperer of Immortality. He has described about John Donne. And Thomas Crew wrote Elegy for John Donne. As in your syllabus you have elegy also, so you have to remember all the important elegies which were written by the important poets or important writers. Understood? You will get the questions from there. तो जेहेतु तुम एलिजी सिलेबस रे अच्छी तो मो किछि एलिजीस गुड़ाक भी मन रखा पड़ो जोटा कि बहुत इंपोर्टेंट राइटर्स मानकर पोएट मानकर इंपोर्टेंट एलिजीस जहाँ भी तुम पाइब सब गुड़ा ताको मन रखिबो आउ सब जगह जेतिकी भी इंपोर्टेंट एलिजीस अच्छी मु सब डिस्क्राइब कर दीची. Understood? Next, works of John Donne. First one is Songs and Sonnets, Air and Angel, then Nocturnal upon Lucy's Day, A Valediction Forbidding Morning, then The Ecstase, Devotion, Genetius his Enclave, Of the Progress of Soul, and Death's Duel. Okay, Death's Duel. These are the important writings of John Donne. And many other writings also there, but I have given all the important poetries and important writings. Next we will move on to the next writer, that is next poet, that is George Herbert, and his time period was 1593 to 1633. George Herbert, a priest of Church of England, published most of the poem in one volume. Okay, most of the, here this is the poem, most of the poem in one volume. Okay, and his poetry is a picture of many spiritual conflict between God and his soul. And you will find in George Herbert poetry there is a spiritual conflict between God and his own soul. His important writings, that is The Temple, Affliction, Easter Wings, The Caller, and Man. This is all about George Herbert. Next, we will move on to the Richard Crusoe. His time period was 1613 to 1649. Crusoe is the preeminently the English poet of the Counter Reformation. Okay, Crusoe is a preeminently the English poet of Counter Reformation. And his volume of religious poems entitled Steps to the Temple, published in 1646, on his immediate fame. After the publications of this poem, The Step to the Temple, okay, Step to the Temple तांगर गोटे पोएट्री थिला से पोएट्री 1646 रे पब्लिश्ड हेतला से 1646 रे पब्लिश्ड हेबा परे ही जॉन क्रूसो फेमस हेले ओके and his secular poems published in 1648 as a second part of Steps to the Temple are called Delight of Muses. Here his second part, that is the secular poetry. This is the first volume you will find the religious poem Step to the Temple, and in the second part which published on 1648, that is the Step to the Temple, you will find the Delight of the Muses. Okay, this is all about, that is Richard Crusoe. Next we will move on to the next poet or the next writer, that is Henry Vaughan. Vaughan worked under Herbert influence. Many of his poems are devoted to church. So Vaughan का द्वारा इन्फ्लुएंस थिले हर्बर्ट द्वारा आ तांको मोस्ट ऑफ द पोएट्री जतिके भी से पोएट्री लिखिछन्ते सब डिवोशनल थिला बा डिवोटेड टू चर्च ओनली अंडरस्टूड एंड हिज लव पोएम्स आर इनफेरियर टू हिज रिलीजियस पोएम नो डाउट से लव पोएम्स भी लिखुतले बट रिलीजियस पोएम तांको बहुत फेमस थिला देन लव पोएम टा इनफेरियर थिला रिलीजियस पोएम टू अंडरस्टूड एंड वी विल सी सम ऑफ हिज वर्क that is poems Regeneration, The Retreat and Thalia Redivia. These are the important work of Vaughan. Okay. Next we will see the another writer, that is Thomas Crew, and his time period was 1598 to 1633. Crew was a courtier who wrote poems. This is the road. Okay. Who wrote poems in 1640. His longest known poem is the Rapture. Try to remember this one. His longest poem is the Rapture. His poems are influenced by Don and Johnson. Try to remember this. It is the very important point, that is his poems are mostly influenced by Don and Johnson. Next we will see the Abraham Cole. Cole in his own life was considered even greater than Milton. Cole considered himself greater than Milton. Okay, and what the Milton thought about Cole, that is Milton considered him to be one of the three greatest English poets. That is, other is being Shakespeare and Spenser. Okay, so Milton considered him to be one of the three greatest English poets. First one is Shakespeare and next one is Spenser. And we will see some of the writings of Abraham Cole, that is Pyramus and Thisbe, The Mistress, Davidis, then the Pindasque Ode. These are the important writings of Abraham Cole. Next, we will see Andrew Marvell, and you will get the questions from Andrew Marvell. Okay, he was the important writer, poet, and he has written very important poetries also. That is, his time period was 1621 to 1678. And Marvell's poems are described as the finest flower of serious and secular metaphysical verse. Here, Marvell's poems are described about the finest flower of serious and secular metaphysical verse. His work is remarkable for the subtlety of wit, the passionate argument, and the learned imagery combined with the clarity and control of classicists such as Johnson. So, his work is remarkable for the subtlety of wit, passionate argument, and learned imagery. Okay. and you will find the combination of, and clarity and control of classicists such as Johnson. You will find all these combinations in his writings. And we will see some of the important writings of Andrew Marvell, that is to his coy mistress. It is very much important. If you'll get the time, you have to go through this poetry also. It is very much important. Okay, then the rehearsal transport. Okay, the rehearsal transport. Ode upon Cromwell's return from Ireland. Ode upon Cromwell's return from Ireland. Then the new letters. Okay, it is a prose work. The new letters. Okay, it is the prose work. This is all about Andrew Marvell. I hope you understood the concept of metaphysical poetry, and I have highlighted here some of the important points in the beginning. You have to remember all these things, and you have to remember all the names and go through this one by one. You will definitely clarify your doubts. Okay, if you have any kind of doubts regarding the metaphysical poet or poetry, you can ask me or message me. And thank you for the class.